All right, happy Friday, Lang Gang. My awesome crew of 5 here told me to start today with my lovely announcements about AP testing that I found out just last night. So I'm just gonna share from like my notepad that I was taking notes on. And then in the future, I'll have a PowerPoint and a more formal notice written to you guys about what the AP test is gonna look like. You can tell me if this news is exciting or not exciting. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay. So a couple cool things. I think many of you already knew the test is going to be done online and it's only going to be 45 minutes long. So what that looks like for AP English is it's only going to be one essay. Guess which type?
Argument, please.
Rhetorical analysis.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
I know. I'm sure I was just as disappointed as you are. No, it'll be great. So that it's nice that we know which is the one that you guys are going to have on the test, because that means we can really make sure to do our best preparation for that particular type of writing. So, you know, you just did one little mini rhetorical analysis over this online learning period, but we can do a lot more focused and targeted work with that since we still have about 2 more months before you need to take it. So that brings me to my next announcement. The original test date has been pushed back. So now your new test date is Wednesday, May 20th at 11 a.m., which is super cool because that means you get to sleep in a little bit. You know, as long as you're awake by 10, and then you can get some breakfast in your system and like start to log on and do all that sort of thing. And then you'll be ready to go to start your test at 11 in the morning on Wednesday, May 20th. Okay. Another thing I thought was really cool was you're going to actually have the choice to either type it if you prefer typing and you like that online platform, or you can handwrite it and upload a picture. So it's whichever you're more comfortable, however you prefer to write in that 45-minute period. You can either handwrite or type. And then you can do it on your Chromebook or you can do it on your phone. Again, whatever is your preference. And then I'm super excited because this will be the first year where I actually get to see your guys' responses. So they're going to share all of your essays with me a week or 2 after you guys take your test. And I think that's pretty much all the big news. The only other stuff was they talked to us a lot about how they'll be checking for plagiarism and things like that, because obviously you guys know it's pretty crazy to be able to take your AP test at home. They don't want students calling each other up and talking about it while they're taking it, or like going to the internet or going to Reddit or wherever it is people go. So they have a lot of like plagiarism software that they're going to be using to really deter students from cheating. So it sounded really scary. Like I was scared listening to him. So just don't do anything like that. Obviously, like just totally do your honest work. The quote was, "It will be a very unpleasant experience for anyone who's caught cheating." They have like a similar software that they'll scan to compare you to anyone else who's taking the test, and then anything that's on the internet right now. So yeah. I think that's about it. I mean, we got all the good stuff, when the test is, what it's going to look like, how long it's going to be, get to handwrite it or type. So, yeah. What do you guys think? Ooh, Alexa said it doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's really good.
You guys think it sounds okay?
Yeah.
So I think there's like kind of good and bad things to it, right? Like the good thing is it's a lot shorter than what you were originally going to have to do. So now like endurance, you don't have to worry about that. Like, oh my God, I have to read so much and write so much, which is a huge weight off your guys' shoulders. The thing that's going to be a little bit harder is now instead of having multiple things that are going to influence your score, you only have one thing that determines your score. So that means your one essay has to be really good if you want to get a good score. So I hope what that means for us moving forward, as soon as we're done with this argument letter, we're going to move right into some, you know, really focused practice on developing your rhetorical analysis skills so that you guys can feel super, super confident in that particular type of writing, which I know is a little bit challenging because it's just as much about the reading as it is about the writing. So we'll do a lot of reading practice and how do we like analyze the text together, like we did with the Claire Booth loose text, and then transitioning that to writing. So, yeah. Any questions before we get started with our content for today? Do you guys have any questions about the AP test?
I mean, you kind of like answered all of them already.
Awesome.
Oh, my bad, bro. You got anything to say?
No, I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking out loud.
Thinking out loud. Well, if you guys think of any questions, email me. Bring them up later in the middle of class. Remember, I'll have a whole slideshow with this information for you on Monday. What's that?
Okay.
Oh,
no, I'm sorry. That was my niece.
okay. No worries. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with our work for today then. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. I saw that some of you are already on the slides for today. But we'll go ahead and open up that PowerPoint and start going through it. So today you're going to start drafting your letter. So you're writing it out now that you have an outline from yesterday. So you're going to open up that outline for reference. And then you're just going to open up a blank Google Doc to start typing on. Because your final due date for this letter isn't until next Wednesday. So the idea is you're taking your time to work on it today, work on it a little bit on Monday, on Tuesday, and then come see me for any little bit of help that you potentially need on Wednesday before submitting the final draft to Turnitin.com. Okay, so some things we're going to go over today in drafting your letter is the overall tone that you should be writing in, since you have a very specific audience. We're going to go over how you would do the opening of a letter, which is kind of like your introduction paragraph in an essay, but it just looks a little bit different when you're writing a letter. We're going to talk about your body paragraphs, and this is kind of the biggest area of the letter. So this is the part where I will show you a sample. We'll talk about that sample so you have a really good idea of what those body paragraphs should look like and how to write really good commentary. And then we'll wrap up with how are you going to conclude and close your letter and what the general formatting of that letter is going to look like. Okay. So we're going to start with this thing with just thinking about your overall tone and audience that you have for this. How is a letter different from an essay? What do you guys think in terms of like what are you going to need in a letter that you wouldn't necessarily have in an essay? And since you know that you're writing this letter to English teachers at Agua Fria, what does that tell you about like how you would write to them? What do you guys think?
Formal.
Formal? Why do you say formal?
Because you write into like in a authority. It's not like.
Yeah, like someone who's like a little bit higher up than you. So like you want to show respect, authority. Yeah, absolutely. So you do want to write it a little bit formally. Okay. What else do you guys think? How else do you think it'll be different?
Would it be in first person?
Yeah, definitely. So normally like your teachers tell you like, I know that I let you break the rules in AP Lang, but a lot of teachers tell you like, don't use I or you in an essay ever. That's the worst thing you could do. But obviously in a letter, you're going to use I and you because you are writing to someone specific. So you're going to use that first person and second person. Can someone read what Alexa wrote in the chat? I can't see it right now with my screen share on.
She said needs to address the audience with something like, dear so-and-so.
Yeah, excellent. So you're actually like going to be more directly speaking to the audience. So you got to actually greet them, which you wouldn't do in an essay. And the last little piece, yes, you want to be formal in this letter, but because it's English teachers at Agua Fria, because you know that teachers like students and you are a student, what kind of relationship do you also have with English teachers at the school? Is it going to be totally formal? Not quite.
Yeah, no.
I mean, think about how we talk all the time, guys. We're not like perfectly formal all the time because you guys know me. And so you have to find this balance. That's the first thing we want to talk about. Your tone is going to be formal, but you also want to be familiar and personal because teachers do like students. You're writing to teachers specifically at Agua Fria. You're a student at Agua Fria, so there is a bond there. So you want to sound formal and educated, but you can also be a little bit personal and friendly with your audience too. Okay. So as Abdur said, this is an educated audience or an authority. So you have to be really persuasive and convincing to them. Be personal, share your opinions, share your thought, because your audience really does care what you guys think. So you can use you when you're trying to speak directly to the English teacher. So that's the only time when you should be using you is when you're addressing English teachers, because that's who you means in a letter. So when you're saying what they should do or how they should teach it or that sort of thing, you want to use you. And then you want to use I whenever you're sharing personal experiences about your reading of the book, or when you're trying to really connect and engage with your audience and kind of build that connection a little bit more. You are going to use those first and second person a lot more than you would in an essay. Okay, so for the opening of your letter, you want to greet them formally. So we probably wouldn't use dear because dear is kind of more like a friend letter. So you want to say something more like hello or greetings or something like that. That sounds a little bit more formal. Introduce yourself and provide context for why you're writing this letter. So I gave you a couple of ideas of what your context is going to look like. You just finished reading this book. English teachers are always wondering, like, what books should we teach this year? Like, they always have to be teaching books. So clearly, you know, you're trying to give them a suggestion for what that choice should be. You can talk about Agua Fria's context in general, since, like, that's specifically what we're talking about here is Agua Fria English teachers. So what is it like at Agua Fria? You can share in your introduction why you want to share your input on this particular selection here. So you're just kind of building that background after you introduce yourself. And then, of course, just like you would in an essay, you want to end your introduction of the letter with your purpose and thesis. So you're asking them, or you're urging them, or you're convincing them, depending on like how extreme you are and your tone you want to take on here. You're encouraging them, maybe lots of different power verbs you could use, but what is your purpose for writing to them? You want them to teach or to not teach a certain book. You want to make that very clear in your introduction, and you guys wrote those awesome thesis statements yesterday, so you'll put that in there as well. Okay, any questions about the opening or the introduction of your letter so far? All right, then we'll go ahead and move on to the body paragraphs, which is like the biggest part of the letter. So the body paragraphs of the letter where you're actually developing your argument to prove that thesis of why they should or should not teach the book. You can absolutely use APEE structure if you like that. I know some of you really like to have structure in your writing because it makes it easier for you, but you don't need to use APE. We're going to show you an example where you're going to see that it's not in that particular order of A, P, E, E, P, E, E. So we'll look at what that looks like not in APE structure. You do want to provide specific examples from the book, which you should have planned out in your outline yesterday. And the commentary should be the focus. This is the EE of APEE. So this is where you are persuading the teacher. You're going to persuade them in a variety of ways. You're elaborating on what you and other students can like gain from this book and why you can gain it, or maybe what you can't gain from the book and that's why you don't think we should teach it. So you're really justifying the value of importance or why it's not important. Don't be repetitive or fluffy in your body paragraphs here. You have an audience of English teachers. English teachers can see through your fluff, so don't add any extra fluff, okay? You do want to make sure you are transitioning from one body paragraph to another so that your entire letter connects together and flows. So that's all about establishing your line of reasoning. So you'll see examples of transitions in the body paragraph as well. Okay, so here is the sample. So it's one full body paragraph and then the start of the second body paragraph, so you can sort of see how it moves. You'll have to bear with me a little bit. I kind of have to move you guys for a second too. Okay, that works better. All right. So remember in my PowerPoint from yesterday, I gave the example of Cry the Beloved Country because no one chose to do that one. So I want to give you an example on something that you're not particularly writing about. So I'm trying to convince English teachers to read the book Cry the Beloved Country to teach that in their English classes. So in my body paragraph, I said, many students don't know about African culture and history as much as American and European, since those are the major focus in our school curriculum. If students read Cry the Beloved Country in their English classes, that will enhance and build upon what we may have only briefly learned about in our world history courses. In the novel, through the main character, Stephen Khumalo's journey to Johannesburg, I was able to see how African culture varies so much, from the small villages in the countryside that many of the tribes still live in, to the extremely urban setting of Johannesburg, where many younger people move in order to have more opportunities. More importantly, because of these different characters, Khumalo and Jarvis, and others they interact with, I could see the variety of languages spoken in South Africa, from English and Afrikaans to Zulu and countless other tribal languages. South Africa truly is a diverse country, and I would never have understood that or the impacts of that diversity had I not read this book. It's so interesting to read about it outside of a history class in a novel instead, because the author's description of the beautiful countryside and bustling city makes the culture more personal to you, and then you appreciate it so much more. Not only do students normally not know as much about African culture overall, but more specifically, they don't know about apartheid. Sorry, I gotta move this. Okay. More specifically, many of them have never even heard of apartheid, which is such an important part of our world's history that only recently ended in 1994. We know that segregation in the United States ended in the 1960s, but are unaware of the fact that it continued for so long on a different continent. Okay, so there's our example of what the body paragraphs of your letter are gonna kind of look like. And now I just sort of want to debrief that example with you. So first of all, you can see my overall thesis was that teachers should teach this book because students are not exposed to African culture and history. So this paragraph really helped prove that, given my experience about what you guys are already learning in world history classes, and then the evidence from the book itself. So I gave specific examples from the book as evidence. I talked about the main characters, the settings of the countryside and the city of Johannesburg. I talked about the different languages that are referenced in the book. So I gave some really specific examples. Okay, and then I provided plenty of commentary, which is my original thought, and I marked that on the next slide. So just so you can kind of see these pieces of the body paragraph broken up, you have my assertion is going to be in blue. That connects to my thesis. My evidence in green. And then my commentary is going to be in yellow. And then you can see my transition as well, just to show how I connected my second body paragraph to my first one. Okay, so you're always going to start out with your assertion. Okay, that's kind of proving the whole point you're going to make. But then you can kind of see I actually moved into commentary here. If students read Cry the Beloved Country in their English classes, that will enhance and build upon what we may have only briefly learned about in our world history courses. So this is my own original thought, me talking about the value of the book. So that's my part of my commentary. And then I get into evidence. So this is not a traditional APEE structure, because I would have given my evidence first. But I just wanted you to see how you don't have to stick to that structure as long as you have good evidence and good commentary. Okay, so then you see I gave all of this evidence. I gave multiple pieces of evidence all in the middle of my paragraph. Talked about the main character's journey to the big city of Johannesburg, the villages, the city itself. I talked about the languages they speak, English, Afrikaans, Zulu. Okay, so I gave all these specific examples, and then I gave 2 more sentences of commentary. So you can see total in my paragraph, I have 3 sentences of commentary, because that's the most important part. Okay, So South Africa truly is a diverse country, and I would never have understood that or the impacts of that diversity had I not read the book. It's so interesting to read it outside of a history class because the author's description makes it more personal, makes you appreciate it more. Okay, then you can see my transition sentence. I'm connecting this first paragraph. Not only do they not normally know enough about African culture, but more specifically, so now I'm tying it into my next point. So you can see that transition sentence as I move into my next assertion. Okay. All right. So the hardest part here is clearly going to be the strong commentary. So what I want you to notice that I did for you as well is I sort of underlined phrases or keywords that you can use in your own commentary to sort of make sure that you're doing it correctly. So if students read whatever book you chose, that will do what for them? How is it going to help them? How is it going to benefit them? Okay, you can use the phrase, I would have never understood something if you hadn't read the book. Okay, obviously you're going to be using because a lot because you're showing like how the book had an impact on you as a reader. So ask yourself why your evidence matters. Consider how the reading of the book affected you and how it can affect other people as well. Make connections to the life and experiences of students. Appeal to the emotions of your audience. Set up those cause and effect relationships. Okay, so that's again why I marked those transitions. Those kind of show the cause and effect. The cause was reading the book. What is the effect of that on the particular audience? Okay, so again, you can see I kind of marked that to show the cause-effect relationship. Okay, so that's essentially kind of what you're doing there, showing that impact. And don't feel like you have to use these particular transition words. There's a link to some other transition words you might use to show cause and effect. Okay, and really just try to make sure you're answering. Bullet point number 2, I think, is the most helpful. How did the reading of the book affect you, and how is it going to affect others? That's where you're really getting into the meat of your commentary. Okay, do you guys have any particular questions about writing your body paragraphs?
No, not really. You kind of explained it all.
Awesome. Thanks, Nasiah. Anybody else? All right, I'll go ahead and move on to the conclusion. So obviously I only showed you 1.5 body, well, not even 1.5. You're gonna have more like 3 or 4 of those in your actual letter. And then you will get to your conclusion. So the biggest difference in a letter than in an essay is you actually want to thank your audience here for taking the time to read the letter, to consider your opinion. I would end with something strong about ultimately why this really should matter to your audience and for students. So why should they care that you really think it's important for them to teach this book? Or why should they care that other students really read this book? Okay, you can include a persuasive final thought. You can do this in any order. You can end with your thank you. You can start with your thank you. It's totally up to you. But then you also want to make sure you sign your name. Okay, so that's what the format of your letter is going to look like. So, hello, Agua Fria English Department. Okay, you can see you've got your multiple body paragraphs. Okay, obviously I was just being a little silly with the letter. This is not what your letter is actually going to look like. But those are just supposed to look like your body paragraphs. Okay, and then at the end, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me, and thank you for investing your time to help students every day. Okay, you'll kind of end with more of a strong final thought there, and then you'll sign off like regards, or maybe you say best, or thank you again, or sincerely, and then you like my little name here, I'm a nerd, because I like to read. Okay, all right. So that's what your letter will look like when you're done, but obviously it's going to look a lot longer than that. All right. So of course, I'll give you one more time, one more opportunity to ask any questions, but the idea is now it's time to get writing. You want to make sure you're making your letter logical, passionate, persuasive. What I would like to do is even send these to different English teachers, some at Agua Fria and some at other schools, so that you guys can actually get a response from teachers about whether or not they want to teach the book after reading your letter. I thought that would be kind of cool. Okay.
It would be.
And then you can just sort of see your timeline there. You will have one little multiple choice Monday to do, but it's only going to take you about 10 minutes. So you'll still have time on Monday to work on your letter as well. You'll have time on Tuesday, and then Wednesday is your final day to work on it. Meet with me, get any extra help. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions about writing the letter? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. All right, seems like we're pretty good to go.
Thank you, Miss Miller.
Yeah, of course. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will be around for office hours if you want me to help you write anything, if you look at anything that you started writing. I hope to see a lot of your faces then, and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.